You found this in the middle of the night, didn't you? That's usually when people do. It's all right. You don't need to talk. Just listen. 5 stories tonight, told slow enough to fade into the rain. If you start to drift off halfway through, that's kind of the point. Story 1. My ceiling fan turned on by itself. Living alone has its perks. You can make your own schedule, keep your space exactly how you want it, play music at whatever volume suits you. I'd been living solo for 3 years and loved it. After a string of difficult roommate situations, having my own place felt like freedom. My name is Lauren, I'm 27, and I rent a small house in suburban Atlanta. Nothing fancy, a 2-bedroom built in the 1970s with shag carpet that should have been replaced decades ago, and appliances that work, but barely. The landlord, Mr. Henderson, had made it clear when I signed the lease that he wasn't planning any upgrades. The rent was cheap enough that I didn't care. I moved in last June. The house was exactly what I needed. Affordable, quiet neighborhood, close to my job as a paralegal. I set up my bedroom in the larger of the 2 bedrooms, turned the smaller one into a home office. Both rooms had ceiling fans, the kind with pull chains for the light and the fan speed. For the first month, everything was normal. I'd come home from work, make dinner, watch TV, go to bed. Standard routine. The house made the usual sounds old houses make. Pipes clanking, floorboards creaking, the AC unit groaning when it kicked on. Nothing concerning. Then, in mid-July, the ceiling fan in my bedroom turned on by itself. I woke up around 2 a.m. to the sound of it whirring, the pull chain clicking rhythmically as it swayed. I definitely turned it off before bed, I always did. The sound and movement made it hard to sleep. I got up and pulled the chain to turn it off, went back to bed, figured the chain mechanism was worn out, that the fan had jiggled itself on somehow through the AC vibrations or the house settling. Old houses, old appliances. These things happened. It happened again 2 nights later, same time, 2 a.m. I woke to the fan spinning at full speed, the chain clicking away. This time I was more annoyed than confused. I turned it off, made a mental note to tell Mr. Henderson about the faulty fan, and tried to get back to sleep. But it happened again the next night, and the night after that. Always at 2 a.m., always full speed, always that clicking chain. After a week of this, I called Mr. Henderson. The ceiling fan in my bedroom keeps turning on by itself. Middle of the night, always the same time. The pull chain mechanism must be broken. Huh, he said. That's the original fan from when the house was built. Never had problems with it before. I'll send someone to look at it next week. Next week was too long. I was exhausted from interrupted sleep. So I did what any practical person would do. I removed the pull chain entirely, unscrewed the little connector, took the chain off, left the fan unable to be operated except by the wall switch. Problem solved. The fan couldn't turn itself on anymore because there was no mechanism to turn it on with. I went to bed that night, confident I'd finally get uninterrupted sleep. At 2 a.m., the fan turned on, full speed, even without the pull chain, even though the wall switch was in the off position. I stared up at it in the darkness, watching the blades spin, listening to the motor hum. This wasn't a mechanical problem. This was something else. I got up and flipped the wall switch off and on several times. The fan didn't respond to the switch. It just kept spinning at full speed, completely independent of any controls. I went to the breaker box and cut power to the bedroom. The lights went out. The alarm clock shut off. But the ceiling fan kept spinning, running on nothing, running on something I couldn't see or measure or explain. I spent that night on the couch, called in sick to work the next morning. By 10 a.m., I was at Mr. Henderson's office. The fan is running without power, I told him. I cut the breaker, removed the pull chain. It doesn't matter. It turns on at 2 a.m. and runs until sunrise. He looked at me like I was crazy. Fans don't run without power. That's not how electricity works. I know that. But I'm telling you, this fan does. Something is wrong with the house. He sighed. I'll come take a look. But I'm telling you, there's a logical explanation. Probably a wiring issue, some kind of short circuit. He came by that evening with an electrician. They checked the wiring, tested the circuits, examined the fan motor. Everything was normal. The electrician said the fan was old but functional. Nothing wrong with it that would cause it to operate independently. Could be the switch, the electrician suggested. Sometimes they can get stuck in a halfway position. They replaced the wall switch. That night, at 2 a.m., the fan turned on again, full speed, running on invisible power, controlled by nothing I could identify. I started researching the house, public records, property history, anything that might explain what was happening. The house had been built in 1974 by a couple named Robert and Susan Chen. They'd lived there until 1988, when Susan died. Robert sold the house shortly after and moved out of state. I found Susan's obituary. Susan Chen, 34, died at home after a brief illness, survived by husband Robert and daughter Michelle, age 6. Brief illness. Died at home. I wondered if she died in this house, in this bedroom, in the room where the ceiling fan now turned on by itself every night at 2 a.m. I tracked down the next owners. A family named Morrison had lived there from 1988 to 2003. I found their contact information and called. We loved that house, Mrs. Morrison told me. Raised our kids there. But there were some odd things. The ceiling fan in the master bedroom had a mind of its own, always turning on at random times. My stomach dropped. At 2 a.m.? How did you know? Because it's still doing it. Did you ever figure out why? We tried everything. New fans, new wiring, even had the house blessed by a priest. Nothing worked. Eventually, we just got used to it. Called it Susan's fan. The previous owner's wife who died. We figured if she wanted the fan on, we'd let her have it. After the Morrisons, the house had gone through 3 more sets of tenants before I moved in. I tracked down 2 of them. Both confirmed the same thing. The ceiling fan turned on by itself at 2 a.m. every night, without fail. Why didn't Mr. Henderson tell me about this? I asked Mrs. Morrison. Because no one stays long once they find out. The house has a ghost, sweetie, and she's particular about that fan. I didn't believe in ghosts, didn't believe in supernatural explanations for natural phenomena, but I couldn't deny what was happening. Every night at 2 a.m., the fan turned on. Every attempt to stop it failed, and multiple families over 30 years had experienced the exact same thing. I decided to try something different. Instead of fighting it, I'd observe it, document it, understand it. That night, I set up my phone to record the fan. Started recording at 1:55 a.m., positioned the camera to capture the entire ceiling and fan. Then I waited. At exactly 2 a.m., the pull chain moved, by itself, lifted up as if pulled by an invisible hand, then dropped back down. The fan clicked on and began spinning. I watched the recording a dozen times. There was no string, no mechanism, no explanation for how the chain moved. It just moved, like someone was standing there pulling it, even though no one was there. I tried speaking to the empty room. Susan? Is that you? Are you the one turning on the fan? The fan continued spinning. No other response. No sounds, no signs. Just the steady rotation of the blades. I'm not trying to disrespect you. I just want to understand. Why the fan? Why 2 a.m.? Still nothing. Just the fan, spinning in the darkness. I thought about Susan Chen, died at 34, brief illness, at home, in the summer in Georgia, in a house without central air conditioning, with only ceiling fans to provide relief from the heat. Had she been sick in this room? Had she spent her final days here? too weak to get out of bed, relying on the ceiling fan to keep her cool. Had she died at 2 a.m. in the summer heat with the fan spinning above her? And now, decades later, did she still turn it on every night? A habit so ingrained that even death couldn't break it? Or was she trying to stay cool in an afterlife that still felt like that summer bedroom? I decided to do something that probably seemed crazy. I spoke to the room, to Susan, to whatever presence was controlling the fan. I understand now. You need the fan on. That's okay. You can keep it on as long as you want. I won't fight it anymore. This is your house too. That night, I left the fan alone. Let it turn on at 2 a.m. Let it run until dawn. Tried to sleep through the noise and the movement, and something strange happened. Around 4 a.m., I woke up naturally, not from the fan noise, from silence. I looked up. The fan had turned off, on its own, 3 hours earlier than usual. After that night, the pattern changed. The fan still turned on at 2 a.m., but now it turned off around 4 or 5 a.m. instead of running until sunrise. Like Susan, or whatever was controlling the fan, appreciated being acknowledged, being given permission instead of being fought. I got used to it. Started sleeping with earplugs to muffle the sound. The fan would turn on, run for a few hours, turn off. A routine I could live with. But then, in September, something new happened. I woke up one night, not at 2 a.m., earlier, around midnight, to find the fan running. And it was cold. Not just cool from the fan breeze, but actually cold. Like the temperature in the room had dropped 20 degrees. I could see my breath. In Georgia, in September, in a room that should have been sweltering. And I felt something. A presence. Not malevolent, not threatening, but definitely there. Someone in the room with me. Someone I couldn't see but could sense. "Susan?" I whispered. The cold intensified. The fan spun faster, the motor straining, and I heard something. Not a voice exactly, but a sound. A whisper that might have been wind or might have been words. Hot. That's what it sounded like. A single word, barely audible. Hot. You're hot? You want the fan on? The cold lessened slightly. The fan slowed to normal speed. Okay, I understand. The fan helps you. You can use it whenever you need to. The presence faded. The cold disappeared. The room returned to normal temperature, but the fan kept running, and I felt like I'd just had a conversation with a dead woman. Over the next few months, I learned Susan's patterns. The fan turned on at 2 a.m. every night. That was consistent. But it also turned on during hot days, during humid evenings, anytime the temperature climbed above 75 degrees. And occasionally, I'd feel that presence, that sense of someone else in the room, someone who died here and never quite left. I started talking to her. Nothing elaborate, just acknowledgments. "Morning, Susan. Hot day today, huh? Go ahead and turn the fan on if you need to." It felt less lonely somehow, like having a roommate who was very quiet and very particular about climate control. My friends thought I was losing it. "You're talking to a ghost? You believe your house is haunted?" I believe something is happening that I can't explain, and I believe the previous occupant of this room still has some kind of presence here. Whether that's technically a ghost or something else, I don't know. But fighting it was exhausting. Accepting it is easier. Mr. Henderson tried to convince me to move to a different rental property he managed. "I'll break your lease early, no penalty. You can move to a newer place, no weird fan issues." But I said no. I'd gotten used to Susan, used to the routine, and honestly, the rent was still the cheapest I could find. A ghost who wanted the ceiling fan on was a small price to pay for affordable housing in Atlanta. Then, in February, almost a year after I'd moved in, something changed. I came home from work to find the fan in my office running. The fan I never used. The fan I'd never even turned on once in all the months I'd lived there. I stood in the doorway of the office, staring at the spinning blades. This wasn't the master bedroom. This wasn't Susan's room. "Susan, is that you?" No response. No cold. No presence. Just the fan running at medium speed. I checked the room. Nothing seemed disturbed. My desk was exactly as I'd left it, papers and laptop untouched. But the fan was definitely on, running smoothly, the pull chain swaying gently. That night, both fans turned on. 2 a.m., both the master bedroom and the office, both running at full speed. Over the next week, the pattern expanded. The kitchen light would turn on at random times. The bathroom faucet would turn itself on, running for a few minutes before shutting off. The TV in the living room would change channels by itself. This wasn't Susan anymore. This was something else. Something more active, more present, more aware. I called Mrs. Morrison again. "Did you ever have other things happen? Beyond the fan? Lights turning on, water running, things moving?" She was quiet for a long moment. "That started happening near the end of our time there, around year 12 or 13. We thought maybe Susan was getting more comfortable, more able to interact with the physical world. But it was unsettling. That's part of why we moved." "Did it get worse?" "It got more frequent, more insistent, like she was trying to communicate something but couldn't quite figure out how, or like she was getting frustrated that we couldn't understand her." After we hung up, I sat in my living room and addressed the empty house. "Susan, I don't know what you're trying to tell me. I've let you run the fan. I've acknowledged your presence. I've tried to be respectful. What else do you need?" All the lights in the house turned on at once. Every bulb, every lamp, every overhead light. The house was blazing with illumination. Then, one by one, they turned off. Except for one. The light in the office. That stayed on. I walked to the office. The light was on, the fan was running, and on my desk, papers I'd left scattered were now arranged in a neat pile. On top was a sheet with a single word written in what looked like water. Something had traced letters on the paper using water from the bathroom faucet. The word was Michelle. Michelle, Susan's daughter, the 6-year-old girl who'd survived her mother. Who would be, I did the math, 41 years old now, if she was still alive. "You want me to find Michelle?" I asked the empty room. The fan spun faster, approving. The light flickered once, twice. Yes. Finding Michelle Chen took 3 days of searching. She'd married, changed her last name to Rodriguez, and was living in Florida. I found her on social media, sent a message explaining who I was and that I was living in her childhood home. She responded within hours. "I haven't thought about that house in decades. My mother died there when I was 6. It was traumatic. We moved away shortly after and I never went back." I told her about the fan, about the pattern, about the presence I'd felt, about how I thought her mother was still there, still turning on the fan every night at 2 a.m. Michelle called me. "My mother died in that bedroom. It was summer, July. She had cancer. The last few weeks, she was too weak to get out of bed. She was always hot. The medication made her run a fever. She'd make my father turn on the ceiling fan. She'd tell him, 'Higher, Robert, turn it higher.' Even on her last day, even in her final hours, she wanted the fan on." "She died at 2 a.m.? "Yes. How did you know?" "Because that's when the fan turns on. Every night. For the past 30 years, every tenant has experienced it. Your mother turns on the fan at the exact time she died." Michelle was crying now. "I was so young. I barely remember her, just fragments. Her voice, her smile, the way she'd brush my hair. And yes, that fan, always running, always whirring above her bed." "I think she's trying to reach you," I said. "The activity has increased. She's moving things, turning on lights, leaving messages. She wrote your name in water on my desk." Why now? Why after all these years? I don't know. Maybe because I acknowledged her. Maybe because I'm the first tenant in a while who actually talked to her, treated her presence as real. Maybe she thinks I can help. Help with what? I think she wants to see you. Wants you to come to the house, to say goodbye properly. You never got that chance when she died. You were 6, traumatized, taken away. Maybe she's been waiting all this time for you to come back. Michelle was silent for a long time. I don't know if I can. That house, it holds so many painful memories. I understand. But I think your mother is stuck here. Stuck in this loop of turning on the fan, trying to stay cool, reliving her final nights. Maybe if you came back, if you talked to her, if you gave her permission to let go, maybe she could finally rest. 2 weeks later, Michelle flew to Atlanta. She stood in front of the house for a long time, tears streaming down her face, before finally walking up to the door. I'd cleaned the house, especially the master bedroom, made it respectful, quiet, peaceful. Michelle walked through slowly, touching walls, looking at spaces that held memories she'd mostly forgotten. When she entered the master bedroom, she stopped. This is where she died. I remember now. I remember being so scared, not understanding why Mommy wouldn't wake up. We sat in the room as evening fell. Michelle talked to her mother, to the empty air, to the presence neither of us could see but both of us could feel. I'm okay, Mom. I grew up okay. Dad took care of me. I went to college. I got married. I have 2 kids, your grandchildren. They're beautiful. I wish you could have met them. The ceiling fan turned on, not the harsh click of the pull chain, but a gentle start, like someone had eased it on carefully. It spun slowly, peacefully. I forgive you for leaving. I know you didn't want to. I know you fought to stay. I just want you to know that I'm okay, that you can stop worrying, that you can stop turning on the fan every night at 2 a.m. You can rest now. The temperature in the room dropped, that familiar cold I'd felt before, but this time it felt different, not uncomfortable, almost like a hug, like being wrapped in cool air that held love and longing and goodbye. Michelle felt it too. Mom? And then, impossibly, the ceiling fan spelled something. The shadow cast by the spinning blades, the way the light hit it, for just a moment, it formed letters on the wall. 2 words. Love you. Michelle sobbed. I love you too, Mom. So much. I always have. The cold faded. The presence lifted. And when the fan stopped spinning, it felt final. Not like it would turn back on later. Like it had completed its purpose. We sat in silence for a long time. Then Michelle stood up. Thank you. For letting me do this. For believing. For helping my mother find peace. Do you think she's really gone? I don't know, but I hope so. I hope she's finally free. That was 4 months ago. The ceiling fan hasn't turned on by itself since. Not at 2 a.m., not during hot days, not ever. The house is just a house now. Normal, quiet. A little lonely, actually. I miss Susan in a strange way. Miss the routine, the sense of sharing the space with someone, even if that someone was a presence from another time. The house feels emptier now, more like just a rental property and less like a home that remembered its former occupants. But I'm glad Michelle got to say goodbye. Glad Susan got to hear that her daughter was okay, that her sacrifice, staying alive as long as she could, fighting the cancer as hard as she could, wasn't in vain. That Michelle grew up loved and safe and became a mother herself. Sometimes I wonder if ghosts are just people who never got to finish something, who died with unfinished business, unspoken words, unresolved love. Susan died watching her 6-year-old daughter, knowing she'd never see her grow up, never meet her grandchildren, never know if Michelle would be okay. And for 30 years, she stayed. turning on that ceiling fan every night at 2 a.m., the way she had in her final days, unable to rest because she didn't know if her daughter had survived the loss. If Michelle had turned out okay despite losing her mother so young. Now she knows, and now she can rest. My ceiling fan turned on by itself for almost a year, and in that year, I learned that some hauntings aren't malicious. They're not angry spirits or vengeful ghosts. Sometimes they're just people who loved so much that even death couldn't make them leave. People who stayed because they had to know their loved ones would be okay. Susan Chen was one of those people. A mother who couldn't leave until she knew her daughter was safe. A woman who spent 3 decades as a presence in her former bedroom, limited to one action, turning on a ceiling fan, trying to maintain some connection to the physical world she'd left behind. And when she finally heard what she needed to hear, when her daughter came back and told her everything would be okay, she was able to let go, to stop turning on the fan, to stop reliving her final feverish nights, to finally rest. If your ceiling fan turns on by itself, if lights flicker for no reason, if you feel a presence in your home that you can't explain, don't immediately assume it's something dark or dangerous. Sometimes hauntings are just love that couldn't let go. Unfinished business that needs resolution. People who stayed because they had to, not because they wanted to frighten anyone. Talk to the presence. Acknowledge it. Try to understand what it needs. And if possible, help it find peace. Help it complete whatever kept it tethered to the physical world. Susan needed to know her daughter was okay. Once she knew, she could leave. Your ghost might need something different, might need an apology or forgiveness or acknowledgement, or simply someone to remember they existed. Give them that if you can. Help them rest. Because being stuck between worlds, able to do only small things, like turning on fans or flickering lights, unable to communicate fully or interact meaningfully, that's its own kind of hell. My ceiling fan turned on by itself, and in figuring out why, I helped a mother and daughter have the goodbye they never got. Helped a woman who died 30 years ago finally find peace. The fan is still there, above my bed, but it doesn't turn on anymore unless I flip the switch. The house is quiet now. Normal. Maybe a little too normal, too empty. But I'm glad Susan is at rest. Glad she could finally let go. Glad that after 3 decades of turning on a ceiling fan at 2 a.m. every night, she got to hear the words she needed to hear. I'm okay, Mom. You can rest now. And she did. Finally, after all those years, she rested. The ceiling fan that turned on by itself was never trying to scare anyone. It was just a mother, trying desperately to stay cool during her final feverish nights, and then trying desperately to watch over her daughter from beyond death. Now both of them can finally be at peace. Michelle knows her mother never really left her, and Susan knows her daughter turned out okay. The fan is just a fan now, but I'll never look at it without remembering the woman who used it to maintain the only connection she could to the world she'd left behind. The mother who loved so much that even death couldn't make her stop caring. My ceiling fan turned on by itself, and in the end, it was just love. Powerful, enduring, desperate love. The kind that transcends death and finds ways to persist, even in the simplest actions. The kind that turns on a fan at 2 a.m. every night for 30 years. Until finally, it hears the words it's been waiting for. I'm okay, Mom. You can rest now. And then, at last, it does. Story 2. The broken walkie-talkie answered back. I found the walkie-talkies at a yard sale when I was 10. 2 bright yellow handhelds, scuffed up and probably from the 90s, sitting in a box of old electronics. The lady running the sale said they didn't work anymore. No batteries, probably fried circuits. She sold me both for $1. I didn't care that they were broken. They looked cool. I was big into spy stuff that summer, running around the neighborhood with my best friend Kyle, pretending we were secret agents. Broken walkie-talkies were perfect props. I kept one, gave Kyle the other. We'd hold them up to our mouths, say, "Roger that," and copy, pretending we were communicating across vast distances even though we were usually 10 feet apart. Stupid kid stuff. But it was fun. That lasted maybe 2 weeks. Then Kyle moved away. His dad got transferred for work, and suddenly they were gone. New state, new school, no more spy missions in the neighborhood. I put my walkie-talkie in a drawer and forgot about it. Fast forward 8 years. I'm 18, packing for college, going through my childhood room deciding what to keep and what to throw out. Found the walkie-talkie in the back of a drawer, covered in dust. Looked at it for a minute, remembering Kyle, remembering being 10 and thinking broken toys were treasures. Almost threw it away. But something made me keep it. Nostalgia, I guess. Tossed it in a box of things I was taking to my dorm. College was fine. Made friends, went to classes, did the whole freshman experience. The walkie-talkie sat on my desk as a decoration, a reminder of simpler times. Sometimes people would ask about it, and I'd tell them the story. Most thought it was weird I'd kept a broken toy. I thought it was weird too, honestly. Winter break, I came home for the holidays. Brought some stuff back from my dorm, including the walkie-talkie. Left it on my old desk in my old room. That's when it turned on. I was lying in bed, almost asleep, when I heard it. Static. That distinctive crackling sound of a radio trying to find a signal, coming from my desk. I sat up, looked over. The walkie-talkie was glowing. The little LED indicator light was on, red, pulsing slightly. The speaker was emitting static, getting louder. But the thing hadn't had batteries in 8 years. Shouldn't have had power. Couldn't have power. I got up, picked it up. It was warm. The static continued, punctuated by occasional pops and bursts. I found the power switch, turned it off. The LED went dark. The static stopped. Probably some weird electrical short, I figured. Old electronics did weird things. I took the batteries out. They were corroded, crusty, clearly dead, and set the walkie-talkie back on the desk. Went back to bed, fell asleep, woke up to static again. 3 a.m., according to my phone. The walkie-talkie was on again, glowing, crackling with interference. But I'd removed the batteries. There was no power source. It shouldn't be turning on. I got up, turned on my desk lamp. The walkie-talkie sat there, LED glowing, speaker hissing with static. I picked it up, checked the battery compartment. Empty. No batteries. But somehow it had power. I pressed the talk button, not really thinking. Hello? The static stopped. Complete silence. Then, faintly, through the speaker. Hello? My voice. My exact voice. Played back to me like a recording. I dropped the walkie-talkie. It hit the desk with a plastic clatter, the LED still glowing. Hello? My voice again, coming from the speaker. Same inflection, same tone. Hello? Hello? I backed away from the desk. This was wrong. Walkie-talkies didn't record. They were just transmitters and receivers. And this one was broken. Had been for 8 years. The voice stopped. The static returned. Then, after a moment, different words. Are you there? Still my voice. But I hadn't said those words. Not into the walkie-talkie. Not just now. Who is this? I asked, not touching the device. Static, crackling. Then, it's me. It's Kyle. Kyle, my childhood friend. The one who'd moved away 8 years ago. That's not funny. Who is this really? It's Kyle. I have the other walkie-talkie. Remember? You gave it to me. Kyle moved away. This is some kind of prank. I know I moved. But I kept it. The walkie-talkie. And it started working again. Started calling out. And you answered. I stared at the device on my desk. The LED pulsed in the darkness. This wasn't possible. These walkie-talkies were broken. Had never worked. Not even when we were kids. If you're really Kyle, tell me something only he would know. Pause. Static. Then, your dog's name was Buster. You had a scar on your knee from falling off your bike. Your mom made those cookies with the M&Ms, and we'd steal them before they cooled. All true. All things Kyle would know. But also things someone who'd known me as a kid could find out, could remember. This isn't real, I said. This is impossible. I know, but it's happening. I've been trying to reach you for days. Finally got through tonight. Where are you? Long pause. Longer than comfortable. Then quietly. I don't know. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. Just sat at my desk, watching the walkie-talkie, listening to the static. Sometimes it would form words. Kyle's voice, or what sounded like Kyle's voice, asking if I was still there, saying he didn't know where he was, saying he was scared. When morning came, the walkie-talkie went silent. LED dark. No power. Just a broken toy again. I told myself it had been a dream, sleep deprivation, stress, nostalgia creating vivid hallucinations. But the walkie-talkie sat there, real and physical, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something had happened. I looked up Kyle online, found his social media. His accounts were active, photos from 2 months ago, posts about college in Arizona, normal stuff. He was alive, well, living a regular life. So, what had I talked to last night? I messaged him. Hey, weird question. Do you still have that old walkie-talkie from when we were kids? He responded a few hours later. Wow, blast from the past. No, I threw that thing out years ago. Why? Just found mine, made me think of you. Good times. We were such nerds, LOL. He'd thrown it out, years ago, so the voice I'd heard couldn't have been him, couldn't have been coming from his walkie-talkie, but I'd heard it, heard him, and somehow he'd known things only Kyle would know. That night, I waited, sat at my desk watching the walkie-talkie. Midnight passed, 1 a.m., 2 a.m. Nothing, just a dead device, no power, no signal. Then at 3 a.m. exactly, it turned on again. LED glowing, static building. Hello? The voice. Kyle's voice. I picked it up this time, pressed the talk button. Who are you? You're not Kyle. Kyle threw his walkie-talkie away. Static silence. Then, I know. That was a long time ago. But I'm still here, still using it, still trying to reach you. That doesn't make sense. If Kyle threw it away years ago, how are you transmitting? Because I never threw it away. Not really. Part of me stayed with it. Part of me is still 10 years old, still holding it, still trying to call you across the distance. What are you talking about? You know how sometimes you lose something? Something that mattered, and it's like a piece of you is still looking for it, still reaching for it, even years later. That's me. The part of Kyle that missed you. The part that wanted to stay in touch. The part that held on to that stupid broken toy because it was the last connection to his best friend. I felt cold. Kyle's alive. He's in college. He's fine. I know. He's fine. Living his life, moved on, made new friends. But this part of him didn't move on. This part is still 10 years old, still in that moment when we were separated, still calling out. And finally, you heard me. This is insane. You're not a ghost. You're not a memory. You're just some kind of weird signal interference. Maybe, but I'm still here, and I'm still scared. Scared of what? Of being alone. Of being forgotten. Of existing in this space between what was and what could have been, with no way forward and no way back. The static grew louder. I could hear something behind it. Not words, but emotion, loneliness, fear, desperation. I set the walkie-talkie down. This was too much, too weird, too unsettling. "I can't help you," I said. "You're not real. You're just echoes or whatever. I'm sorry. Please don't leave. Please don't stop listening. If you stop, I'm alone again. I'm always alone here." I turned off my desk lamp, lay down in bed. The walkie-talkie kept transmitting, kept calling out, Kyle's voice getting smaller and more distant, until finally, silence. I went back to college after the holidays. Didn't bring the walkie-talkie. Left it in my old room, in a drawer, tried to forget about it. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still out there, still calling. Some fragment of Kyle, or something pretending to be Kyle, trapped in a broken toy, reaching across years and distance for connection. I started having dreams about it. Dreams where I was 10 years old again, holding the walkie-talkie, trying to reach Kyle after he moved away. But in the dreams, the device worked. Worked perfectly. And Kyle answered. But when I asked where he was, he'd say he didn't know. Say he was lost somewhere. Say he'd been calling me for years, but I'd never heard him until now. I'd wake up unsettled, couldn't focus on classes. Started researching online. Found stories about EVP, electronic voice phenomena, ghosts or spirits supposedly communicating through electronic devices. Radio static, white noise, recordings that picked up voices that shouldn't be there. But this wasn't a ghost. Kyle was alive. This was something else, some kind of emotional imprint maybe, a fragment of consciousness that had somehow gotten embedded in an object that had mattered to us as kids. Or I was losing my mind. That seemed more likely. Spring break, I went home again. The walkie-talkie was still in my drawer. I took it out, looked at it in daylight. Just a toy, yellow plastic, scuffed. No batteries, no power source, completely inert. I decided to throw it away. Whatever was happening, it would stop if the device was gone. I could move on, forget about it, get back to normal life. I took it to the trash can outside, held it over the opening, ready to drop it in. Don't. I nearly dropped it anyway. The voice came from the speaker, clear and desperate, the LED glowing even in sunlight. "Please don't throw me away. Please don't leave me in the dark. You're not real. You're just interference, just my imagination. I'm real enough to be scared, real enough to know that if you throw me away, I'll be alone forever. Isn't that real enough?" I stood there, walkie-talkie in hand, feeling ridiculous and terrified and sad all at once. "What do you want from me? Just listen sometimes. Just remember. That's all. Don't let me disappear completely." I brought it back inside, put it on my desk in my old room, and I started talking to it. Not every day, but sometimes, late at night when I couldn't sleep. I'd press the button and say hello, and Kyle, or whatever it was, would answer back. We'd talk about being kids, about the games we played, the things we did, about the summer before he moved away, when everything was simple and friendship felt permanent. And slowly, I realized something. The voice was changing, not Kyle's voice anymore. Not quite. It was becoming something else, older, sadder, more aware of what it was. "I'm fading," it told me one night. "The more we talk, the more I remember that I'm not really Kyle. I'm just an echo of him, and echoes fade. I don't want you to fade. It's okay. I think I needed someone to hear me, to acknowledge I existed even if I was just a fragment. You did that. That's enough. What happens when you're gone? I don't know. Maybe nothing. Maybe I just stop. Maybe I finally let go of that moment, that loss, that desperate need to stay connected. Maybe that's what peace is." Over the next few months, the transmissions became less frequent, weaker. The static grew louder, the voice fainter. Sometimes I'd try to call and get no response. Sometimes the walkie-talkie would turn on by itself, but only emit static, no words. The last time I heard the voice clearly was in August, almost a year after it first spoke to me. "Thank you," it said, "for listening, for remembering, for letting me exist a little longer. I'm sorry I can't keep you. It's okay. I think I'm ready now. Ready to stop calling out. Ready to just be a memory instead of trying to be real. Will I hear from you again? Maybe. Or maybe this is goodbye. Either way, it was good to talk to you. It was good to be remembered." The LED faded. The static stopped. The walkie-talkie went dark. It never turned on again. That was 3 years ago. I'm 21 now, in my senior year of college. The walkie-talkie sits on a shelf in my apartment. Just a broken toy. No power. No signal. Normal. I still think about it sometimes. About what I heard. What I talked to. Was it really some fragment of Kyle? Some piece of childhood friendship that had gotten trapped in an object? Or was it just me projecting loneliness onto static, creating voices out of my own need for connection? I don't know. Maybe it doesn't matter. I looked up Kyle recently. He's doing well. Good grades, girlfriend, plans after graduation. We're not in touch anymore. Grew apart, like childhood friends do. That's normal. That's life. But I wonder if he ever thinks about those walkie-talkies. If he ever feels like part of him is still 10 years old, still holding that yellow device, still trying to reach across distance to a friend who's moved on. I wonder if we all leave pieces of ourselves behind in the objects that mattered to us. If our strongest emotions, our fears, our loves, our losses, can imprint on the physical world and linger there long after we've moved on. And I wonder what happens to those fragments when no one remembers them anymore. Do they fade? Do they disappear? Or do they just keep calling out into the static, hoping someone, anyone, will hear them and acknowledge they existed? To this day, I can't throw that walkie-talkie away. It sits on my shelf, silent, powerless, just a piece of yellow plastic, but I keep it. Because whether it was real or imagined, something spoke to me through it. Something needed to be heard. And maybe that's what ghosts really are. Not spirits of the dead, but echoes of feelings that were too strong to completely disappear. Emotions that got embedded in objects, in places, in moments that mattered. Love that lingers, fear that persists, loneliness that calls out even after the person has moved on. If you find an old toy from your childhood, something you shared with a friend you've lost touch with, hold on to it. Listen to it, even if it's silent, because maybe, somewhere in the static between what was and what is, a part of them is still reaching out, still remembering when things were simple, still calling your name, still hoping you'll answer back. I kept the walkie-talkie, and sometimes, late at night, I press the button and say hello, just in case, just to acknowledge that once, something spoke to me. Something needed connection badly enough to reach across years and impossibility to find it. The device never answers anymore. But I like to think that somewhere, in whatever space echoes go when they fade, something heard me. And maybe that was enough. The broken walkie-talkie answered back once, showed me that even after we lose people, even after we move on and grow up and forget, some part of those connections remains. Some fragment of what we meant to each other. And if you listen carefully enough, in the quiet moments, in the static between stations, you might hear it calling, trying to reach you one more time, before it fades completely. Story 3, the camera faced the wrong direction. I bought the security camera system on Amazon after someone broke into my apartment building and stole packages from the lobby. Nothing serious, but it made me paranoid about my own place. I lived alone in a one-bedroom apartment in Austin, worked remotely, and spent most of my time at home. The idea of someone breaking in while I slept was enough to justify the $200 investment. The system came with 4 cameras, one for the front door, one for the living room, one for the bedroom, and one for the back patio. Easy installation, good reviews, motion detection, and night vision. Everything synced to an app on my phone so I could check the feeds from anywhere. I installed them on a Saturday afternoon in late August, mounted the cameras, connected them to Wi-Fi, configured the app. The front door camera showed my hallway perfectly. The living room camera covered the main space. The patio camera showed my small balcony and the parking lot beyond. Everything worked exactly as it should. The bedroom camera was the last one I set up. I mounted it in the corner opposite my bed, angled to capture the door and window. When I checked the feed on my phone, something seemed off. The angle looked wrong. The camera was pointing toward my bed instead of the door. I went back to the bedroom, adjusted the camera mount, checked the app again, still pointed at the bed. I repositioned it 3 times, each time making sure it was angled toward the door. Each time, the app showed the bed in the center of the frame. Finally, I unscrewed the camera completely, held it in my hand, pointed it directly at the door, looked at my phone. The feed showed my bed. Even though the camera was physically aimed at the door, the video showed my bed. I thought it was a defective unit. Emailed the company, explained the issue. They sent me a replacement camera overnight. Good customer service, at least. The new camera arrived Monday. I installed it in the same spot, carefully aimed it at the door, checked the app. The feed showed my bed. Same problem. Different camera, same result. I called the company's support line, explained the situation to a technician. He walked me through troubleshooting steps, reset the camera, reinstall the app, check for firmware updates. Nothing worked. The camera kept showing my bed no matter where it was pointed. That's impossible, the technician said finally. The camera shows what it's pointed at. If you're aiming it at the door, it should show the door. I'm telling you it doesn't. It only shows my bed. Is there a mirror in the room? Sometimes cameras catch reflections that make the angle look wrong. No mirror. And I've held the camera in my hand, pointed it directly away from the bed, and it still shows the bed in the feed. Long pause. Sir, that's physically impossible. Cameras don't work that way. I know that. That's why I'm calling you. He offered to send another replacement. I accepted, even though I was pretty sure it wouldn't help. The third camera arrived Wednesday. Same model, same specs. I installed it, aimed it at the door. The feed showed my bed. I wasn't even surprised anymore. I tried something different. I set up the bedroom camera in my living room, pointed it at my couch. The feed showed my couch correctly. Then I carried the living room camera into my bedroom, pointed it at the door. The feed showed my bed. It wasn't the cameras, it was my bedroom. For some reason, any camera placed in my bedroom would only show my bed, regardless of where it was aimed. That was impossible, but it was happening. I started researching online, looked for similar experiences, weird camera glitches, anything that might explain this. Found nothing. Plenty of posts about cameras with bad angles or distorted feeds, but nothing about cameras that showed something different from what they were pointed at. I posted about it on Reddit, tech support subreddit, paranormal subreddit, both. Got a few responses. Check for magnetic interference. Your camera might be hacked. Probably just a software glitch. Have you tried a different camera brand? And one comment that stood out. Cameras show what needs to be seen. If it's showing your bed, maybe there's something about your bed you need to see. I dismissed that one as unhelpful mysticism, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. That night, I decided to watch the bedroom camera feed. Just sit on my couch and watch my bed on my phone for a few hours. See if anything unusual happened. For the first hour, nothing. Just my bed, neatly made, empty. The feed was clear, 1080p HD, night vision showing everything in that grayscale green. Around 11 p.m., I saw something move. Just a shift in the blankets. like someone had rolled over under the covers, but my bed was empty. I could see that clearly on the feed. No one was in it. I watched more carefully. Another movement at 11:15. The pillow indented slightly, like a head had pressed into it. Then the indentation faded. At 11:30, the blankets moved again. This time, I could see the shape of something under them. A body-sized lump lying on its side, facing away from the camera. I stood up, walked to my bedroom, opened the door. My bed was empty, completely empty. I pulled back the blankets. Nothing there. No one in the bed. No explanation for what I'd seen on the camera. I went back to my couch, checked the feed again. The lump was still there, still visible on the camera. A person-shaped form under my blankets, moving slightly like it was breathing. I was looking at my empty bed through my bedroom door and simultaneously seeing someone in that bed on my phone. Both views were real. Both were happening at the same time, but they showed different things. I didn't sleep that night, just sat on my couch watching the camera feed. The figure in my bed stayed there until around 6 a.m., then it sat up. The blankets fell away, revealing a person, hard to see clearly in the night vision, but definitely human-shaped. They sat on the edge of the bed for a few minutes, then stood up and walked toward the camera. As they got closer, I could make out more details. It was a woman, dark hair, average height, wearing what looked like pajamas. She walked right up to the camera, looked directly into it. Her face was pale, expressionless. Her eyes were dark hollows in the night vision. She stared into the camera for maybe 30 seconds, then she walked away, out of frame. The bed was empty again. At 7 a.m., I went back into my bedroom. Nothing looked disturbed. The bed was exactly as I'd left it. No sign anyone had been there. But the camera had shown someone. Had shown a woman sleeping in my bed, getting up, walking around. The camera that was supposedly pointed at the door, but only showed the bed. I saved the footage. Watched it again in daylight to make sure I hadn't imagined it. No, it was there, clear as day. Or rather, clear as night vision, a woman in my bed. A woman who wasn't physically there when I checked. I showed the footage to my friend Marcus. He watched it, frowned. "Dude, that's creepy. You should call the police." "And tell them what? My camera is showing a ghost in my bed?" "I don't know, but that's definitely not normal. Maybe someone's been breaking into your apartment while you're asleep. Maybe the camera is catching them, but they're leaving before you wake up. I checked the bed while the camera was showing someone in it. There was no one there. I was looking at an empty bed while the camera showed someone in it." Marcus didn't have an answer for that. No one did. Over the next week, I watched the camera feed every night. The woman appeared every time, always around 11 p.m., always sleeping in my bed until around 6 a.m., always getting up, walking to the camera, staring into it, then leaving. I tried everything to capture her physically, set up my phone to record my bedroom from a different angle. It showed an empty bed while the security camera showed someone in it. Stayed awake in my bedroom all night, saw nothing with my own eyes, but the camera feed showed the woman sleeping 3 feet away from me. She existed only on the camera. Only in the feed from a camera that insisted on showing my bed, no matter where it was pointed. On the 8th night, I decided to try something. When the woman got up and walked to the camera, staring into it like she did every night, I took a screenshot zoomed in on her face. Ran it through reverse image search, found a match. An obituary from 2019. Jennifer Hayes, 34, passed away unexpectedly at her home. Beloved daughter, sister, and friend. Services will be held. The photo in the obituary matched the woman in my camera feed. Same dark hair, same facial features. Jennifer Hayes had died 5 years ago, and she was appearing on my security camera every night, sleeping in my bed. I looked up her address from the obituary. It matched my apartment building. Apartment 3B, my apartment. Jennifer Hayes had lived here, had died here, and now she was showing up on my camera, sleeping in the bed where she'd probably died. I found more information about Jennifer's death. Local news article from 2019. Woman found dead in apartment. Police rule death as natural causes. She died in her sleep. Heart condition she didn't know she had. Her body was found 2 days later by her landlord after she missed rent payment. She'd been alone. No one had known she was dead until it was too late. The camera was showing me Jennifer Hayes. Every night she came back to the apartment where she died, slept in the bed where her body had been found, went through the motions of her final night alive. Over and over, trapped in a loop. And the camera faced the wrong direction, not because it was broken, but because it was showing me what I needed to see. Not the door, not potential intruders, but the ghost of a woman who died alone in this apartment. I tried to communicate with her, wrote messages, left them on the bed. Jennifer, I know who you are. I know what happened to you. Is there something you need? The next night, she appeared as usual, slept until 6 a.m., got up, walked to the camera. This time, instead of just staring, she raised one hand, pointed, not at the camera, behind it, at something in the corner of the room. I turned on my bedroom light, checked where she'd been pointing. The corner had a small closet. I opened it. Nothing unusual, just some of my clothes, some storage boxes. I pulled everything out, checked the walls, the floor, the ceiling. Found something. A loose floorboard in the back corner. I pried it up. Underneath was a small space, maybe a foot square. And inside that space was a box. Wooden, old, dusty. I pulled it out. Inside the box were letters, dozens of them, handwritten, dated from 2018 and early 2019, all addressed to someone named Michael. Love letters, from what I could tell, letters Jennifer had written but apparently never sent. I read through them. They told a story. Jennifer had been in love with someone named Michael. They'd dated for 2 years. She'd been planning to propose to him, had written all these letters expressing her feelings, her hopes, her plans for their future together. The letters stopped in March 2019, 2 months before she died. The last letter was different from the others. Angry, hurt. Michael had broken up with her, had told her he'd never loved her, had been seeing someone else the whole time. Jennifer had hidden these letters, had kept them secret even in death. And now she was showing them to me through the only means she had, appearing on a camera that refused to show anything except what she needed me to see. I found Michael on social media. He still lived in Austin. I sent him a message, said I was living in Jennifer's old apartment and had found some of her belongings, asked if he wanted them. He responded immediately. Please throw them away. I don't want anything to remind me of her. Cold, callous. This was the man Jennifer had loved, the man she'd written dozens of letters to, and he couldn't even be bothered to care about her belongings. I wrote back, she loved you. These letters show how much she loved you, and you broke her heart. She was obsessed. She wouldn't let go. I had to cut her off completely. It wasn't healthy. She died alone, 2 months after you left her. She died in this apartment and no one found her for 2 days. Long pause. Then, I didn't know she died. I blocked her number. I didn't want contact. I'm sorry she's dead, but that's not my fault. Maybe it wasn't his fault, but he'd broken her, had left her alone and heartbroken. And she died that way. Alone. Still in love with someone who didn't care. I didn't respond to him. Just blocked him. He didn't deserve to know about the letters. Didn't deserve Jennifer's love, even posthumously. That night I laid out all the letters on my bed, arranged them in order, let Jennifer see them, let her know I'd found them. Let her know someone knew about her love, her pain, her loss. I spoke to the empty room. I found them, Jennifer. I read them. I know what happened. I know what Michael did to you. I'm sorry. I'm sorry you were alone. I'm sorry you died before you could move on from him. I watched the camera feed on my phone. At 11 p.m., Jennifer appeared. But this time, she didn't lie down in the bed. She sat on the edge, looking at the letters spread across the blankets. She reached out. I couldn't see her hand clearly, but the letters moved slightly, like someone was touching them. She sat there for an hour, just sitting, looking at the letters. Then she stood up, walked to the camera, looked into it one last time, and smiled, just slightly, just enough to see even in the grainy night vision. Then she faded, didn't walk away, didn't leave the frame, just faded out of existence, disappeared completely. I watched the feed until morning. She didn't come back. The bed stayed empty. The apartment stayed quiet. The next night, I checked the camera feed again. Nothing. No Jennifer. Just my empty bed, exactly as it should be. I watched for an hour, 2 hours. She never appeared. She was gone, released, free to move on to whatever came next. I kept the letters. Didn't feel right to throw them away. They were evidence of Jennifer's capacity for love, proof that she'd felt deeply, loved completely, even if it ended badly. She deserved to have that remembered. I also kept the security camera system, all 4 cameras. They work perfectly now. The bedroom camera shows the door like it's supposed to, points at whatever I aim it at. No more mysterious feeds showing things that aren't there. But I wonder sometimes if it was ever really broken, or if it was doing exactly what it was meant to do, showing me what I needed to see, leading me to something Jennifer needed found, giving a ghost a way to communicate across the barrier between death and life. The camera faced the wrong direction, but maybe it was facing exactly the right direction all along, just not in any way I could have predicted or understood. To this day, I think about Jennifer Hayes, about a woman who died alone in the apartment I now call home, about someone who loved so deeply it persisted beyond death, who needed someone, anyone, to find those letters, to know her story, to acknowledge that she'd existed, that she'd loved, that her pain had mattered. I gave her that, found the letters, read her words, bore witness to her heartbreak, and in doing so, gave her permission to finally let go. The camera doesn't show her anymore. The bed is just a bed. The apartment is just an apartment. But I remember. I know what happened here. I know Jennifer's story. And sometimes, late at night, I check the camera feed, just to see, just to make sure. The bed is always empty. Jennifer is gone. She got what she needed, someone to find her letters, to see her pain, to understand that she mattered. The camera faced the wrong direction, until it didn't, until it showed me exactly what I needed to see, and in doing so, gave a lonely ghost the peace she'd been searching for. I hope she's resting now. I hope she's free. I hope wherever she is, she knows someone found her letters, someone read her words, someone knows she loved. The camera works normally now, points where I tell it to point, shows what it's supposed to show, just doors and windows and empty rooms. But I'll never forget what it showed me when it faced the wrong direction. A woman sleeping in my bed, a ghost trapped in her final night, a love story that ended in heartbreak and death. The camera showed me Jennifer Hayes, and in doing so, gave both of us exactly what we needed. Her, someone to remember her. Me, a reminder that the spaces we inhabit are never truly empty, that sometimes the things we see are less important than the things we're meant to see. The camera faced the wrong direction, but it was pointing exactly where it needed to be. Story 4, The Field That Hummed After Midnight. I never wanted to move back to rural Kansas. After college, I'd sworn I was done with small towns, with endless fields of wheat and corn, with the kind of isolation that makes you feel like you're the only person on earth. But when my grandmother got sick and needed someone to help manage her farm, I was the only family member who could relocate. My name is Casey, I'm 25, and I moved to my grandmother's property outside of Lawrence last spring. The farm is 80 acres, most of it leased to neighboring farmers for crops. Grandma lives in the main farmhouse, a 2-story structure from the 1950s. There's a smaller cottage about a quarter-mile away, where the farmhands used to live back when the operation was bigger. That's where I moved in. The property is beautiful in its own stark way. Flat land stretching to the horizon, massive sky, the kind of quiet you can't find in cities. At night, you can see every star, hear every sound for miles. It's peaceful, usually. The cottage suited me fine. 1 bedroom, small kitchen, a living room with windows overlooking the fields. I could see the main house from my porch, could walk over to check on Grandma whenever needed. During the day, I worked remotely as a technical writer. At night, I'd have dinner with Grandma, then walk back to the cottage and enjoy the solitude. For the first few weeks, everything was normal. I fell into a routine. The isolation that I'd dreaded actually became comfortable. The silence was no longer oppressive. It was calming. Then, in early June, I started hearing the humming. It was faint at first, so quiet I thought I was imagining it. A low, steady tone, like a power line or distant machinery. It would start around midnight and continue until dawn, when it would fade away with the sunrise. I checked all the obvious sources. The cottage had no humming appliances. The refrigerator had its own distinct sound. The AC made a rattling noise, not a hum. This was different, lower, more resonant, coming from outside. I went onto the porch to investigate. The sound was definitely external, but I couldn't pinpoint the direction. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once, filling the night air. The next morning, I mentioned it to Grandma. "Do you hear humming at night, like machinery running?" She looked at me strangely. "From the field?" "I don't know where it's coming from, just a constant hum, starts around midnight." Her expression changed. She set down her coffee cup carefully. "The west field?" I couldn't tell. "It sounds like it's coming from all around." "It's the west field," she said with certainty. "Has been for 60 years. Your grandfather heard it too, when we first moved here. Others before us heard it. The farm has been here since 1890, and they say the humming has been here just as long." "What causes it?" She shrugged. "No one knows. Your grandfather had the power company check the lines, had the county send engineers. They all said there was nothing mechanical causing it, just the field. After midnight, humming. That doesn't make sense." "No," she agreed. "It doesn't. But that doesn't make it any less real. You'll get used to it. We all do. Just don't go into the field when you hear it." "Why not?" Her face went serious. "Because people who go into that field after midnight don't always come back the same. If they come back at all." I wanted to laugh it off as rural superstition. But the way Grandma said it, the fear in her voice, it wasn't a joke. She genuinely believed the field was dangerous after dark. That night, I listened more carefully. The humming started at 12:03 a.m. low, steady, unchanging. And now that I knew to listen for it, I could tell it was definitely coming from the west, from the field that stretched beyond the cottage, a 40-acre expanse of wheat that should be silent and still. I grabbed a flashlight and walked to the edge of the field. The wheat was about knee-high, planted 2 months ago, growing well. During the day, it was just a normal field. But at night, with the humming filling the air, it felt different, wrong. The sound was definitely coming from within the field, not from any piece of equipment or power line, from the field itself, or from something in the field. I stepped between the rows of wheat. The humming got louder. Not dramatically, but noticeably. A deep, resonant tone that I could feel in my chest now, almost subsonic. I walked deeper into the field, maybe 30 feet from the edge. The humming was surrounding me, vibrating through the ground, through the air. The wheat seemed to sway with it, moving in rhythm with the sound, even though there was no wind. And the stars, when I looked up, the stars were wrong. Not in the wrong positions, but wrong somehow, like they were too bright, or too close, or moving slightly when they shouldn't be. I heard Grandma's warning in my head. Don't go into the field when you hear it. I turned and walked back out. As soon as I crossed the threshold where field became yard, the humming became more distant again. Not gone, but muted, like a door had closed between me and the source. I went back to the cottage and tried to sleep, but I couldn't stop thinking about the field, about the humming, about what Grandma had said, that people don't always come back the same. I started researching the property's history, found census records, property deeds, newspaper archives. The farm had been established in 1890 by a family named Whitmore. They'd worked the land for 20 years before selling it in 1910. No explanation for the sale in any records I could find. The next owner, Jacob Morrison, had lived there until 1923. His death certificate listed cause as natural causes, but a newspaper article from that year mentioned that he'd been found in his field, dead with no apparent injury or illness, just lying in the wheat as if he'd fallen asleep and never woken up. 3 more families owned the farm before my grandparents bought it in 1963. Each one stayed less than a decade. The property had a reputation for being difficult. Land was fertile, crops grew well, but something about the place made people uncomfortable. I found a journal entry from 1897 written by Margaret Whitmore, the wife of the original owner. It was in a historical society collection preserved as part of Local History. One entry, dated July 15, 1897, read, "The sound begins at midnight now, every night. Samuel says it is nothing, merely the land settling, but I know better. I have gone into the west field when the humming is loudest. The wheat moves as if touched by invisible hands. The air feels thick, weighted, and I have seen lights, small, darting things that disappear when I try to focus on them. Samuel forbids me from going into the field after dark anymore. He is afraid. I am afraid too, though I cannot say why." Another entry from August 1897. "Michael Henderson from the neighboring farm has not been seen for 3 days. His wife says he went into our west field 3 nights ago. Investigating the sound, he has not returned. Samuel and the sheriff searched, but found nothing. No body, no sign of disturbance. It is as if the field swallowed him. I found a death record for Michael Henderson, listed as missing, presumed dead, 1897, never found. Over the next few days, I interviewed some of the older residents of Lawrence who remembered the farm. Most had similar stories. Strange sounds at night, a feeling that the west field was off. Some mentioned people who'd gone into the field after midnight and had changed. Changed how? I asked one elderly man at a local diner. Hard to explain, he said. They'd come back different, distant, like part of them stayed in the field. They'd move slower, talk slower, like they were always listening to something no one else could hear. Most of them moved away eventually, couldn't stand being near the field anymore. That night, I watched the field from my porch. The humming started at midnight, same as always. But this time I saw what Margaret Whitmore had written about lights. Small points of illumination moving through the wheat, darting and weaving, never staying in one place long enough to focus on. They weren't fireflies. Wrong time of year, wrong behavior. These lights moved with purpose, with intelligence, and they stayed about 4 feet off the ground, hovering at human height. I called Grandma. "Do you see the lights in the west field?" She didn't ask what I meant. I stopped looking years ago. Easier that way. What are they? I don't know, Casey. Your grandfather thought they were some kind of natural phenomenon. Swamp gas or St. Elmo's fire or something like that. But this isn't a swamp, and those explanations never quite fit. Has anyone ever figured it out? In 60 years? Has anyone done a proper investigation? People have tried. University researchers came out in the 70s with all kinds of equipment, recorded the sound, tested the soil, measured electromagnetic fields, found nothing unusual, or nothing they could explain, at least. The humming registered on their equipment, but they couldn't identify a source. The lights didn't show up on their cameras. After 3 nights, they left and never published any findings. Why not? One of them had a breakdown, started talking about the field being a thin place, wherever that means. The others wanted nothing more to do with it. That's what the field does, Casey. It makes people uncomfortable. Makes them want to leave. That's why we've had so much turnover. That's why you're the first family member willing to move back in decades. After hanging up, I made a decision. I was going into that field. I was going to document whatever was happening. Not at midnight. I wasn't that reckless. But at dusk, when the humming was just starting, when I could still have the protection of twilight. I grabbed my phone, made sure it was fully charged and recording, and walked into the west field at 11:45 p.m. The humming hadn't started yet. The field was silent, the wheat still, everything normal. I walked to the center of the field, roughly 20 acres from any edge, set up my phone on a small tripod, aimed at the surrounding wheat. Then I waited. At 11:58 p.m., I felt the change, a pressure in the air, like before a thunderstorm, the kind of charged atmosphere that makes your hair stand up. At midnight exactly, the humming began. Soft at first, then gradually building. The wheat started to sway. The air grew thick, heavy, and I felt something I hadn't experienced in my brief ventures into the field before. A pull. Like gravity had shifted, like the ground was tilting, even though I could see it was flat. A subtle but insistent force drawing me deeper into the field, toward the exact center. I fought against it, tried to walk back toward the edge, but the pull was stronger than I expected. Each step away from the center took enormous effort, like wading through water. The lights appeared, dozens of them now, surrounding me in a loose circle. Up close, they weren't just lights. They were more complex. Geometric patterns, fractals that hurt to look at directly, shapes that seemed to exist in more dimensions than should be possible. And I realized I couldn't remember which direction was out. The field looked the same in every direction. Just wheat and darkness and those impossible lights I'd been in the exact center, should be able to navigate by stars. But when I looked up, the stars were still wrong. Moving, forming patterns, spelling things I couldn't quite read. The humming was inside my head now, resonating with my thoughts, making it hard to think clearly. I tried to focus on my phone, on the recording, on documenting what was happening, but my hands felt slow, heavy, moving through something thicker than air. I don't know how long I stood there. Minutes, hours. Time felt wrong, stretched and compressed simultaneously. The lights moved closer, the patterns more intricate, the humming louder, and I felt myself starting to understand it. Not words, but meaning, intention. The field wanted me to stay, to become part of it, to join whatever existed in this space after midnight. I thought about Michael Henderson, vanished in 1897, about the others who'd gone into the field and never came back, about those who returned changed, distant, like part of them stayed behind. I understood now. The field was taking pieces. Every time someone entered when the humming was active, the field kept a part of them, or gave them a part of itself, an exchange, a merging. I forced myself to move, picked a direction at random, and walked, fighting the pull, ignoring the lights, blocking out the humming as much as I could. Each step was exhausting. Each breath felt like it required permission from the field. But I kept moving. And eventually, after what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, I reached the edge, stumbled out of the wheat into the normal world where the humming was distant again and the stars were in their proper places. I collapsed on the ground, gasping, checked my phone, 12:07 a.m. I'd been in the field for 7 minutes. It had felt like hours. The next morning, I reviewed the recording from my phone. The video showed me standing in the field, motionless, for 6 minutes. No lights visible, no obvious change in the wheat. Just me, standing still, staring at nothing. But the audio picked up the humming perfectly. A low, steady tone at roughly 40 hertz. And underneath it, if you listened carefully with headphones and boosted the volume, there were other sounds, whispers, dozens of voices, maybe hundreds, speaking in overlapping layers. Too distorted to make out individual words, but definitely human voices. I sent the audio file to a friend who worked in sound engineering. He called me 2 hours later. "Where did you record this?" "A field on my grandmother's farm." "Why?" "The bass tone is unusual but not impossible. Could be some kind of geological resonance. But the voices, Casey, those aren't random noise. That's speech, multiple people speaking simultaneously, but at different speeds, different pitches. I've enhanced it as much as I can. Most of it is still gibberish, but I pulled out a few phrases. Do you want to hear them?" "Yes." He played the enhanced audio. Through the distortion and layering, I could make out fragments. Oh, can't find the edge. "How long has it been?" "The lights are beautiful." "Don't remember my name." Still humming, always humming. I felt sick. Those were the missing people. The ones who'd gone into the field and never came back. Michael Henderson from 1897. Others whose names I didn't know. All of them trapped somehow in the field. Their voices recorded in the humming, speaking across decades or centuries. "There's something else," my friend said. "At the very end of the recording, right before you presumably left the field, one voice comes through clearer than the others. It says, 'Help us. Please help us.'" I spent the next week trying to figure out what to do. I couldn't just ignore this. People were trapped in that field somehow, caught in whatever phenomenon caused the humming. But I also couldn't risk going back in. I'd barely escaped once, might not be so lucky a second time. I contacted a professor at the University of Kansas who specialized in geological phenomena, Dr. Sarah Martinez, explained the situation without mentioning the voices or the missing people, just described it as an unusual sound phenomenon that I wanted investigated. She agreed to come out with some equipment, arrived on a Saturday with 2 graduate students and a van full of sensors, recorders, and monitoring equipment. We set up instruments around the field before sunset, geophones to detect vibrations, EMF readers, infrasound detectors, high-quality audio recorders, cameras with various filters, everything they could think of to measure whatever was happening. Then we waited. Dr. Martinez and her students stayed in the cottage with me, watching the data feeds on laptops. At midnight, the humming began. Every instrument went crazy. The geophones showed vibrations but couldn't locate a source. The entire field was vibrating simultaneously, which shouldn't be possible. The EMF readers spiked, showing massive electromagnetic fluctuations. The infrasound detectors picked up frequencies well below human hearing range, and the audio recorders captured it all. The humming, and beneath it, those voices. Dr. Martinez listened to the enhanced audio, her face growing pale. "That's not possible. Those are human voices, but there's no one in the field." "Play it back at different speeds," I suggested. "See if the voices become clearer." Her graduate student manipulated the audio, slowing it down, speeding it up, isolating different frequency ranges, and gradually the voices became more distinct, hundreds of them, speaking, crying, calling out, all trapped in the field's humming. This is incredible, Dr. Martinez whispered, and terrifying. What is this? I think it's people, I said. People who went into the field and never came back. Their voices, their consciousness maybe, trapped in whatever phenomenon creates the humming. That's not scientifically possible. Neither is a field that hums with no mechanical source. Neither are lights that don't register on cameras. Neither is a 40-acre space where time moves differently and gravity pulls toward the center. But it's all happening. She couldn't argue with that. The data was undeniable. Something impossible was occurring in that field. Over the next several nights, we collected more data, mapped the extent of the phenomenon. It was confined strictly to the west field, stopping at the property boundaries with surgical precision. Measured the pull I'd felt. The instruments confirmed a slight gravitational anomaly at the field's center. Documented the lights. They didn't show up on normal cameras, but infrared and ultraviolet detected something, and we listened to the voices. Identified at least 40 distinct speakers, all saying similar things. Confusion about time, questions about escape, descriptions of the beauty of the lights, even as they expressed fear. Dr. Martinez wanted to go into the field. We need internal measurements, need to understand what happens at ground zero. No, I said firmly. People who go in don't come back, or they come back changed. I went in once and barely made it out. Then we'll send instruments, drones, rovers, something unmanned. We tried. A simple drone with cameras and sensors. We flew it into the field at midnight. At the exact moment it crossed the boundary, all signals cut out. The drone simply disappeared. We searched for it the next morning. Found it in pieces, scattered across a 20-foot radius, as if it had been disassembled and the parts thrown randomly. A ground rover with treads and cameras met the same fate. Entered the field, signals died, found destroyed the next morning. Whatever was in that field didn't want to be measured, didn't want to be understood, and definitely didn't want to be intruded upon. Dr. Martinez published a paper. Well, she tried to. No journal would accept it. The data was too anomalous, the conclusions too impossible. She was told, politely, that her equipment must have malfunctioned. That mass hallucination was more likely than a field that trapped consciousness. Frustrated, she posted everything online instead. Raw data, audio recordings, video footage. It got some attention in paranormal circles, but was dismissed by mainstream science as an elaborate hoax. I understood. If I hadn't experienced it myself, I wouldn't have believed it either. But I knew the truth. The field was real, the humming was real, and the people trapped in it were real. I tried to help them. Spent nights at the edge of the field, calling out to the voices in the humming, asking what they needed, how they could be freed. But the only response was that same chorus of confusion and desperation, the same phrases repeated endlessly. Can't find the edge. How long has it been? Please help us. I researched similar phenomena around the world, found a few. A forest in Japan where people reported hearing voices. A valley in Norway where compasses spun uselessly and hikers lost time. A field in Romania where locals refused to go after sunset. All of them had similar stories. Missing people. Strange sounds. The sense that something was wrong with the space itself, that reality worked differently there. Thin places. That's what the researcher in the 1970s had called them. Places where the boundary between our world and something else was permeable, where people could slip through or get caught between. The field on my grandmother's farm was one of those places, had been for over a century, would probably continue to be for centuries more. I moved out of the cottage. Couldn't stand being so close to the field anymore, hearing the humming every night, knowing what it contained. I moved into the main house with Grandma, who didn't ask questions. She'd always known what the field was, had learned to live with it, the way you learn to live with any dangerous feature of your property. But I couldn't stop thinking about the trapped voices, about Michael Henderson from 1897, about whoever else had been caught over the decades, about the fact that they were still there, still conscious, still calling for help. I don't know how to free them, don't know if they can be freed. The field has held them for over a century, might hold them forever. All I can do is warn others. Keep people away from the West Field after midnight. Make sure no one else joins that chorus of lost voices. The field hums after midnight, and in that humming are the voices of dozens of people who went to investigate, who went to understand, who went because they were curious or brave or foolish. And now they're part of the field, part of the phenomenon, trapped in a space that exists slightly outside normal reality, conscious but unable to leave, speaking but unable to be heard clearly. The field that hummed after midnight took them all, and it's still there, still humming, still waiting for the next person curious enough to venture in after dark. If you ever find yourself near a place that feels wrong, a field or forest or valley where the air is too heavy, where sounds are too loud or too quiet, where time seems to slip, leave, don't investigate. Don't try to understand, just leave. Because some places aren't meant to be understood. Some places exist in the cracks between normal space where reality doesn't work the way it should, and people who enter those places don't always come back. The field on my grandmother's farm hums after midnight. It's been humming since at least 1890. And in that humming are the voices of everyone who thought they could understand it, everyone who thought they could document it, everyone who thought they could help. They're all still there, still calling out, still hoping someone will find a way to free them. I hope someday someone does. I hope someday we'll understand these thin places well enough to rescue the people trapped in them. But until then, the field will keep humming, the voices will keep calling, and anyone who ventures in after midnight risks joining them. The field that hummed after midnight took pieces of people for over a century, and it's not done. It's never done. It's just waiting, patient and eternal, for the next person to ignore the warnings and step into the wheat when the humming begins. Don't be that person, please. Don't investigate the strange sounds in the night. Don't venture into places that feel wrong. Don't assume you'll be the exception, the one who makes it out unaffected. Because the field doesn't care about your intentions. It doesn't care about your courage or your curiosity or your desire to help. It just takes, piece by piece, voice by voice, person by person. The field hums after midnight. And in that humming are dozens of voices that once belonged to whole people. People who thought they could understand people who thought they could escape. They were wrong, and now they're part of the humming. Forever. I hear them every night, even from the main house, even with the windows closed, even with earplugs in. That low, steady tone. And beneath it, if I listen carefully, those desperate voices. Help us, please. Don't forget us. I won't forget. I can't forget. But I also can't free them. All I can do is make sure no one else joins them. The field that hummed after midnight. It's still humming, still waiting, still calling. Don't answer, please. Whatever you do, don't answer that call. Story 5. The lantern still burning in the woods. I started hiking the Appalachian Trail in Georgia on March 15th, planning to complete the full through hike to Maine over 6 months. I was 26, recently unemployed, recently single, looking for something to reset my life. The trail seemed like the answer. 2,200 miles of walking, thinking, and being alone with nature. The first few weeks were exactly what I needed. Challenging, but rewarding. I met other hikers, shared campsites, swapped stories around fires. The trail community was supportive and welcoming. By the time I reached North Carolina in early April, I'd found my rhythm. I was hiking alone most days, but never felt isolated. It was in the Nantahala National Forest, about 60 miles into North Carolina, that I first saw the lantern. I'd set up camp for the night at a designated site, a small clearing with a fire ring and a water source nearby. It was getting dark, maybe 8 p.m., and I was eating my freeze-dried dinner when I noticed a light through the trees, not a flashlight beam or headlamp, a steady, warm glow, like an old-fashioned oil lantern. Another hiker, I figured. Someone camping off-trail for solitude. The light was maybe a quarter-mile away, barely visible through the dense forest. I watched it for a few minutes while I ate. It didn't move, just burned steadily in the darkness. I finished dinner, cleaned my cookware, hung my food bag to keep it away from bears. By then it was fully dark. The lantern was still visible, still in the same position, still burning with that warm, unwavering glow. I settled into my tent, read for a while by headlamp. Around 10 p.m., I turned off my light and looked out through the mesh window. The lantern was still there, still burning. Same spot, same intensity. I fell asleep watching it. Woke up around 2 a.m. to use the bathroom. The lantern was still burning. Hadn't moved, hadn't dimmed, just glowing steadily in the darkness. In the morning, the light was gone. I hiked out, didn't think much about it. Probably just someone who'd camped overnight and left early. The trail was full of people with different schedules and hiking styles. But 2 nights later, camping at a different site about 15 miles north, I saw it again. Same lantern, same warm glow, same quarter-mile distance through the trees, same steady burning that lasted all night without dimming. This time I was curious enough to mention it to another hiker the next morning, a woman named Katie who'd been on the trail for 3 weeks. "Oh, you saw it too?" she said. "The lantern that never goes out? You've seen it?" "Yeah, 3 times so far. Always at night, always in the distance, always burning until morning. I asked some other hikers about it. A few have seen it, most haven't. But everyone who has says the same thing. It never moves, never goes out, just burns all night." Maybe it's someone's camp light. That's what I thought. But I tried following it one night, hiked toward where the light was, walked for 20 minutes through the woods. The light stayed the same distance away the entire time, like it was moving backward as I moved forward. Eventually I gave up and went back to my tent. The light was still visible from camp, same spot as before. A chill ran down my spine. That's weird. Yeah, there are a lot of weird stories on the AT trail magic, trail angels, strange experiences. Most of it's just people being people. But the lantern, I don't know. It feels different. Over the next week, I saw the lantern 4 more times. Always at night. Always when I was camping. Always that same quarter-mile distance. I tried approaching it once, just like Katie had. Walked toward the glow for 15 minutes. It never got closer. When I turned around and went back to camp, I could still see it burning in the distance. I started asking other hikers about it. Maybe half had seen it, most who had just shrugged it off as someone else's camp. But a few, the ones who'd been on the trail longer, who'd seen it multiple times, seemed unsettled by it. "Been seeing it for 3 weeks now," an older man named Dale told me. "Every single night since I passed through the Nantahala. Used to be I only saw it every few nights. Now it's constant, like it's following me, following you." I know how that sounds. But yeah, I'll hike 20 miles in a day, set up camp in a completely new area, and there it is. Same distance, same direction, same light. It's always to the west of wherever I camp. Always. I checked my own sightings. He was right. Every time I'd seen the lantern, it had been to the west, always roughly the same distance, like it was maintaining a fixed position relative to the trail. I reached Tennessee in late April. The lantern appeared every night now. I'd started taking photos of it, documenting each sighting. The photos showed the light clearly, a warm, golden glow among the dark trees. But they didn't capture how strange it felt, how wrong it was that a light could burn for 8 hours without movement or dimming. Other hikers were seeing it too. Word was spreading through the trail community. Some people thought it was funny, a trail mystery, something to speculate about around campfires. Others were genuinely disturbed. A few hikers had left the trail entirely, saying the light was following them and they couldn't handle it anymore. I met a woman named Sarah who'd been researching it. She'd talked to park rangers, local historians, anyone who might know about unusual lights in these mountains. There are stories, she said, going back over 100 years, people seeing a lantern in the woods that burns all night. Some say it's a ghost, a hiker who died on the trail and is still searching for the way home. Others say it's something older. Cherokee legends mention lights in the mountains that lead people astray. Will-o'-the-wisps, they're called in European folklore, lights that lure travelers into danger. But it doesn't lure anyone. It just exists, stays distant. So far, but there are stories of people who followed it, who went deeper into the woods trying to find it. Most came back, some didn't. What happened to the ones who didn't come back? No one knows. They're just missing. Search parties found no trace, like they walked into the forest and ceased to exist. I should have been scared, should have left the trail or changed my route, but I didn't. Maybe I was too stubborn. Maybe I'd invested too much in the hike to give up. Maybe part of me was curious about what the lantern really was. The night after talking to Sarah, I decided to try something different. Instead of hiking toward the lantern, I stayed in my tent and watched it. Really watched it. Studied the way it burned, looked for any patterns or changes. Around midnight, I noticed something. The light wasn't completely steady. It flickered, just slightly, just occasionally, like a lantern in a gentle breeze. But there was no wind that night. The forest was completely still, and the flickers weren't random. They had a pattern. Long pause, short flicker, long pause. Over and over, like Morse code. I grabbed my phone, looked up Morse code translation, started tracking the pattern. Long, short, long. That was Y. Then short, long, N. Then long, O. Then short, S. Y-N-O-S. No, not Y-N-O-S. I had it backwards, reading right to left instead of left to right. The message was S-O-N-Y. Sony? That didn't make sense. I kept watching. The pattern continued. More letters. S-O-N-Y-U-O, still scrambled. I tried different combinations. Finally figured it out. The letters were coming in reverse order. Reading the message backwards, O-U-Y-N-O-S, rearranged, S-O-N-Y-O-U. Sun Yu, number S-O-N-O-Y-U. I was making mistakes, misreading the pattern. I recorded video on my phone, replayed it slowly, carefully tracked each flicker. After an hour of watching and decoding, I had the full message. Can you see me? My blood went cold. The lantern was asking if I could see it, which meant it knew I was watching. It was aware of me. I turned off my phone, closed my tent, tried to sleep. Couldn't. The light was still visible through the tent fabric, still flickering, still sending its message over and over. Can you see me? Can you see me? Can you see me? The next day, I hiked 25 miles, pushed hard, trying to get ahead of whatever the lantern was, trying to leave it behind. That night, I set up camp exhausted, hoping the light wouldn't appear. It appeared. Same distance, same direction, same steady glow. But the message had changed. I decoded it carefully, double-checking each letter. Thank you for seeing me. Then, so few can. Then, most walk past. Then, most never look. Then, you looked. I sat in my tent, trying to decide what to do. The lantern was communicating. It was thanking me for acknowledging its existence, which suggested it was intelligent conscious. something more than just a natural phenomenon or optical illusion. Against my better judgment, I got out of my tent, stood in the clearing, facing the direction of the light, pulled out my own flashlight, and started signaling back in Morse code simple message. "Who are you?" I waited. The lantern flickered. New message. "I was a hiker." Pause. Then, long ago, 1847, I got lost, died in these woods, been here ever since, carrying my lantern, searching, waiting for someone to see me. I signaled back, "What do you want?" Long pause. Then, to be remembered, to know I existed, to know my death meant something. Another pause. My name was Thomas Brennan. I was 23, from Pennsylvania, died alone, forgotten, until you saw me. I stood there in the darkness, flashlight in hand, communicating with something that claimed to be the ghost of a hiker who died 177 years ago. Part of me still thought this was impossible, that I was experiencing some kind of hallucination or elaborate prank. But the lantern kept flickering, kept sending messages, and I kept reading them. "Others have seen me." Few acknowledge. Fewer respond. You are the first, in many years, to speak back. I signaled. How many years? 43 years. Since someone answered. I thought I would fade, thought I would disappear. But you saw me. You spoke to me. Thank you. Over the next 2 weeks, Thomas and I communicated every night. I'd hike during the day, and he'd appear after dark, maintaining that same quarter-mile distance we'd signal back and forth in Morse code, him flickering his lantern, me flashing my light. He told me his story. He'd been hiking through the Appalachian Mountains in 1847 before there was an official trail. When it was just wilderness, he'd gotten separated from his group during a storm. Wandered for days trying to find his way back. Eventually succumbed to exposure and starvation. His body was never found. His family never knew what happened to him. He'd simply disappeared into the mountains, one more person lost to the wilderness. But his spirit remained, carrying the lantern he'd had with him when he died, walking the mountains for nearly 2 centuries, visible to hikers but rarely acknowledged. Most people dismissed him as a trick of the light or someone else's campfire. The few who noticed him as something unusual usually avoided him, frightened by a light that didn't behave naturally. "Why do you stay?" I asked one night. Unfinished. I never made it home, never completed my journey. Cannot rest until someone finishes it for me. "What do you mean?" "My lantern needs to reach the end, needs to complete the path." I started from Pennsylvania, was walking to Georgia, died halfway, been trying to finish for 177 years, but I cannot move forward, can only watch, can only hope. Someone will carry it for me. I understood then. Thomas wanted me to carry his lantern, to complete the journey he'd started in 1847, to bring it from where he'd died to wherever he'd been trying to go. "Where in Georgia?" I signaled. "Brasstown Bald. The highest peak." I wanted to see it, wanted to stand on top, feel like I accomplished something. Never made it, died in Tennessee, so close, but not close enough. Brasstown Bald was in northern Georgia. I'd already passed it. It was about 200 miles south of where I was now. I was hiking north, heading toward Maine. Going back would mean losing weeks of progress. But Thomas had been waiting for 177 years, had been watching hikers pass by for generations, hoping one would help him. And I was the first in over 4 decades to even respond to him. "I'm hiking north," I signaled. "To Maine. I understand. I should not have asked. It is too much. Forgive me. I will leave you alone. Good luck on your journey. Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for speaking to me." It was enough. To be remembered. To know I existed. Goodbye. The lantern dimmed. flickered, started to fade. "Wait," I signaled frantically. The light brightened slightly. "I'll do it. I'll take your lantern to Brasstown Bald. I'll complete your journey." Long pause. Then, "You would do this. For a stranger. For a ghost. For someone who died. Before your grandparents were born. Y-E-S. Another pause. "Thank you. Come to me tomorrow night. I will give you my lantern. I will show you the way." The next night, I didn't set up my tent. I packed my gear and hiked toward the lantern. It didn't recede this time. As I walked, it stayed in place, getting closer with each step. After 20 minutes, I reached it. The lantern hung from a low branch of an old oak tree. It was real, a physical object, not a ghost or hallucination. An antique oil lantern, brass and glass, burning with real flame that gave off real heat. And standing beneath it, barely visible even in the lantern's glow, was Thomas. Translucent, faded, more presence than form. But there, real waiting. He gestured to the lantern. I reached up, took it down from the branch. It was solid, heavy, warm. The flame inside burned steadily, fueled by nothing. No oil visible, no wick burning down. Just eternal fire that had burned for 177 years. Thomas smiled, or at least the shape I perceived as Thomas made an expression I interpreted as a smile. He pointed south. Then he faded, dissolved into the darkness. Gone. I was alone in the woods, holding a lantern that shouldn't exist. I turned around, started hiking south. Didn't go back to the trail. Just walked through the forest, following the direction Thomas had indicated. The lantern lit my way, never flickering, never dimming, illuminating the path ahead. I hiked all night. The lantern made it possible. The flame was brighter than any flashlight, and it never cast confusing shadows. The woods seemed different with the lantern quieter, calmer, like the light was keeping something at bay. By dawn, I'd covered 15 miles. I found the trail again, continued south. Other hikers stared at the lantern. Some asked where I'd gotten such an unusual light source. I told them it was vintage, borrowed from a friend. Didn't explain that the friend was a ghost. It took me 12 days to hike back to Brasstown Bald. The lantern burned the entire time, day and night, never requiring fuel. Other hikers reported seeing it from miles away at night, a bright, steady light moving through the mountains like a beacon. Some said it was comforting, that seeing the light made them feel less alone, that it reminded them someone else was out there, walking the same path. I reached Brasstown Bald on a Tuesday afternoon, hiked to the summit, 4,784 feet, the highest point in Georgia. Stood on the observation deck, looking out over endless mountains stretching to the horizon. I held up the lantern, whispered, "You made it, Thomas. You're here. You completed your journey." The flame flickered, grew brighter, warmed my hands with gentle heat. Then, slowly, it dimmed. The fire grew smaller, smaller, until it was just a tiny point of light. Then it went out. For the first time in 177 years, Thomas Brennan's lantern stopped burning. I stood there holding the now dark lantern, feeling the glass grow cold in my hands. A breeze picked up, carrying the scent of pine and earth, and I heard a voice, not in my ears, but in my mind. Thomas's voice. "Thank you. I can rest now. I can finally rest." Then silence. Just wind and birds and the normal sounds of the mountain. Thomas was gone, released, free to move on to whatever came after death. I kept the lantern, carried it with me for the rest of my through hike. It never lit again, just stayed dark and empty, a piece of antique brass and glass. But it meant something, proof that I'd helped someone, that my detour had mattered. I completed my hike in September. reached the summit of Mount Katahdin in Maine on a clear, cold day. 6 months and 2,200 miles from where I'd started, I stood on the summit with Thomas's lantern, thought about the journey we'd both completed. His over 177 years, mine over 6 months. To this day, I keep the lantern on my bookshelf. Sometimes late at night, I swear I see a faint glow inside it. Just for a moment. Just enough to make me wonder if Thomas is checking in, letting me know he's okay, letting me know he remembers me the way I remember him. Other hikers still report seeing a lantern in the woods. Not Thomas's, he's at rest, but others. Other lights that burn without fuel, carried by other spirits who died on the trail before completing their journeys. Other ghosts waiting for someone to see them, acknowledge them, help them finish what they started. I tell current thru hikers to watch for lights in the distance, to pay attention when something seems unusual, to remember that the trail is old, that thousands of people have walked it over centuries, and not everyone made it to the end. Some of them are still out there, still walking, still carrying their lights, still hoping someone will notice. If you're ever hiking the Appalachian Trail and you see a lantern burning in the woods, a steady, warm glow that never dims, never moves, just burns through the night, stop and watch it. Try to communicate. See if it responds. It might be someone who's been waiting for decades, for centuries, just for someone to see them, to acknowledge they existed, to help them complete their journey. I saw Thomas's lantern. I spoke to him. I carried his light to where it needed to go. And because of that, a man who died in 1847 finally got to finish his hike. The lantern is dark now, sitting on my shelf, cold brass and empty glass. But I remember when it burned, remember the light it cast on my path through the mountains, remember the weight of it in my hands. And sometimes, late at night, I see that faint glow. Just for a moment. Just a flicker. Thomas checking in, saying thank you, reminding me that what I did mattered. The lantern still burning in the woods, not his anymore, but others. Always others. Always lights in the distance. Always spirits waiting. Always hoping someone will see them. Watch for the lights. Stop and acknowledge them. They've been burning for so long. They deserve to finally go out. They deserve to finally rest.